Yifan took out the holy fruit he had picked from the ancient forbidden land, but the holy prince recognized it at a glance. It was the Nine Temples Immortal Medicine of the Xianxia clan. The immortal divine medicine of the Xianxia clan is named the Nine Temples Immortal Medicine. It takes several thousand, or even tens of thousands of years to mature just once. He is ever-changing and unpredictable. Each time, it is different. Therefore, it has 9 different kinds of fruits that grow in a cycle. Only after hearing the Holy Prince's explanation did Yifan finally understand why the immortal divine medicine in the ancient forbidden land, after being divided by its roots, would produce 9 different kinds of holy fruits. It turns out its name is Nine Temples, and it inherently possesses these 9 forms. Yifan asked him about the major royal clans of the Primordial Era, and whether each clan possessed an immortal divine medicine. The Holy Prince said that was mostly the case. Before the Primordial Era, those few immortal divine medicines all had owners. Later, they likely fell into the hands of the human race's great emperors, and after that, they flew into the 7 great life forbidden stones. Yifan immediately asked the Black Emperor what the immortal divine medicine of the beginningless great emperor was, because he seemed to still be on this mountain, and had not flown away. The Black Emperor told Yifan that the beginningless great emperors was the divine sovereign immortal medicine. The divine sovereign immortal medicine can allow a person to be completely reborn. Its medicinal effects are among the best of the several immortal divine medicines. It's not as simple as just extending one's life essence. The Black Emperor asked the Holy Prince if he had another brother who survived. When he said this, he was practically grinding his teeth, because more than 2,000 years ago, a monkey had also entered Purple Mountain. Not only did he take away a medicine king, he also burned the Black Emperor's tail bald. But the Holy Prince said he had no brothers. When the great calamity struck back then, it seemed he only had an uncle, who was far away in the western desert. His current status, whether he is alive or dead, is unknown. During the Primordial Era, the Fighting Saint Ape clan was a small clan of only 2 or 3 branches. However, their bloodline was incomparably powerful. They could intermarry with other races to continue the Saint Ape bloodline. The Holy Prince said that the kings of the Primordial Era were about to reawaken. He had to find the ancient immortal peach tree, otherwise, it might fall into the hands of other primordial clans. Hearing these words, Yifan and the others were all greatly shocked. After the primordial clans reawaken, will they seize the immortal divine medicines as compensation? The Holy Prince told them that would most likely be the case. After all, those once belonged to them. Now, they would naturally want to reclaim them. However, he also explained that not all primordial races were vicious and evil. Those who indiscriminately killed the innocent were a minority of clans. So, their relationship with the human race would not necessarily be like fire and water. Finally, he said, the human race also existed during the Primordial Era, but their numbers were scarce back then, and they seemed weak. Yet, they had also produced invincible beings. The human race was born as early as the Primordial Era. This left Li Haishui and the others utterly astonished. To them, the Holy Prince was undoubtedly a living fossil. Yifan and the others asked many questions, all eager to get to the bottom of things. What exactly happened during the Primordial Era? Why did it seem like all life on Earth was extinguished once? And what about the absolute beginning ancient mine, the divine ruins, and the undying mountain, and the immortal mausoleum, these life-forbidden stones? What was the story behind them? The Holy Prince seemed to be lost in distant memories. He slowly recounted the events of the Primordial Era, captivating the minds of everyone present. The creatures of the Primordial Era, only the supreme beings who reached the ultimate realm, could take on a human form. This form represented invincibility, and was a typical characteristic of a king. All other creatures would revere it. However, the inexplicable appearance of the human race broke this convention. Humans were born in this form from the start, which alarmed all other races. Originally, when the other races saw so many humanoid creatures, they were nothing short of terrified. Later, they were gradually relieved after learning that the human race was incredibly weak. But this also greatly angered some of the ancient races. They believed it was a humiliation to the primordial kings. At that time, they nearly exterminated the entire human race. However, among the primordial creatures, not all were vicious and evil. There were also a few clans that could distinguish right from wrong. A powerful race stepped forward to protect the human race, and thus the human race was able to continue. Over the long course of time, the land naturally could not avoid countless wars. All kinds of creatures could be drawn into them. Of course, the human race was no exception. The human race was extremely rare at that time, and incredibly weak, but they had room for growth. There once appeared a supreme being who could contend, a supreme existence to contend with. This shook all the races of the Primordial Era. From then on, the human race finally gained a foothold among the myriad races of the Primordial Era. No longer were they regarded simply as food by some races. Wu Zhongxin asked the Holy Prince to elaborate, but when the great calamity struck back then, he was too young, and knew very little. He only knew some simple stories from the past, as a member of a primordial royal clan, but due to his young age, his understanding of that era was extremely limited. When the great calamity arrived, he was inexplicably sealed away, and slept for tens of millions of years. The Holy Prince shared some of the past events he knew. He said the origin of the human race was mysterious. It should have come from an accident. Although their cultivation methods were primitive, their power was extraordinary. The two supreme scriptures, the sun and the lunar, were the ancient sacred relics of the human race in the Primordial Era. The Holy Prince lamented that the human race was very mysterious back then, and their numbers were very few. He never imagined that after countless ages, they would become so prosperous, surpassing all other races of the Primordial Era. He didn't know much about the past events of the Primordial Era, and knew very little even about his own fighting Saint Ape lineage. He only remembered his father allowing his uncle to go to the western desert. Yufan and the others speculated that the great calamity of the Primordial Era was likely a drastic change in the world, making it unsuitable for primordial creatures to survive, and cutting off the path of cultivation, which is why the great extinction occurred. But upon hearing this, the Holy Prince shook his head. He said that an ancient prophecy came true, which led to the retreat of the various primordial clans. At the time of the retreat, the Holy Prince was still a young child, so it was impossible for him to have access to the highest secrets. He only knew bits and pieces. The reason he has grown to his current state is because he had already awakened within the immortal tomb. He cultivated for many years to achieve his current accomplishments, and was finally cut out by Yufan. When the royal clans of the Primordial Era cultivated to the ultimate realm, they were only revered as emperors when they transformed into a human form. This was the first time Yifan and the others had heard this. The past has always been a source of pain, and each generation of ancient emperors, before their death, was like a deity, and left behind some prophecies, which were later verified one by one. But the Holy Prince didn't know about these things either. He couldn't explain the truth of the Primordial Era's great calamity at all. Yufan and the others all felt a sense of regret in their hearts. After all, this was a mystery for the ages. If even this living fossil couldn't clarify it, who else could possibly know? Li Haishui suddenly asked the Holy Prince, "Do immortals exist in this world?" Everyone fell silent. They all wanted to know the answer. The Holy Prince told them that they should exist. His father was an invincible being, supreme in heaven and on earth. Unfortunately, by the time he was born, his father's life essence was already depleted, and not long after, he passed away. When the Holy Prince was less than 3 years old, his father, the Saint Emperor who shook the Primordial Era, passed away. Aside from the clan's legacy, he left almost nothing for him, but he remembered one thing his father said: in the most ancient of times, there should have been immortals. But unfortunately, they could no longer be seen in later ages. Yufan and the others brought up the 7 great life forbidden zones again. The Holy Prince said, there weren't this many life forbidden zones during the Primordial Era. The ancient Forbidden Land and the Undying Mountain did not exist in the Primordial Era. The Holy Prince speculated that they were terrifying forbidden zones formed later, comparable to, or even surpassing, the previous desolate lands. As for the absolute beginning ancient mine, that was the supreme sacred land of the primordial races. In those bygone ancient times, only the world-shaking primordial emperors could enter. As for the immortal mausoleum, it is said that it is the spiritual energy of some immortals. It is vast and boundless. Not a blade of grass grows, and the bloody land stretches for 10,000 li. It was already a life-forbidden zone in the Primordial Era. The divine ruins, according to legend, fell from another world. These words from the Holy Prince were shocking. The history of the divine ruins formation is extremely ancient, and simply cannot be traced back. Even the most ancient emperors among the primordial races could not deduce its era. Within the divine ruins, there are indeed the southern heavenly gate and the heavenly palace. These awe-inspiring relics, they have stood for tens of millions of years without decaying. Simply impossible for them to have been preserved by human power. Yufan also couldn't be certain if there really was another vast and mysterious immortal realm. In his view, the cultivators of this world were already comparable to the immortals of myths and legends. If there were another mysterious world, he really couldn't imagine what kind of people existed there. However, Yufan had always been skeptical, and didn't believe that immortals truly existed. The great emperors of old should be the ultimate realm. Although he had seen the 9 dragons pulling the coffin, That was most likely a formation at the saint level, not the work of immortals. The Holy Prince also said he had never heard of the immortal realm, but he did hear his old father mention the two words immortal realm. The Holy Prince's father was revered as the fighting saint emperor. His cultivation was profound, can be called the greatest of all time. Throughout all of history, the fighting saint emperor's life essence was depleted when he had a son in his later years. On his deathbed, he once spoke of the immortal realm, saying that it most likely existed, but that was also his regret, that he could not enter it in his lifetime. The Holy Prince's uncle once said that his father was born at the wrong time, otherwise he would have had a chance. Unfortunately, it was during the great change of the world, to have no fate with the immortal realm, and couldn't even deduce its location. In the end, the fighting saint emperor could only sigh his whole life, feeling incomparably lonely and disappointed, because until the very end, he could not personally verify his own speculations. As for the Undying Mountain, the Holy Prince found the name somewhat familiar, but this ancient mountain did not exist during the Primordial Era. The Black Emperor asked him to think about it more carefully, what place the Undying Mountain was during the Primordial Era, because both the beginningless Great Emperor and the Ruthless Great Empress had been there, comprehending the Tao on the Undying Mountain, leaving behind indelible marks under the Tao comprehension tea tree. The Black Emperor wanted to learn more. The Holy Prince pondered for a long time, but he had never heard of the Undying Mountain. However, in the legends of the Primordial Era, there was an undying heavenly sovereign, but he added that this was an almost mythical figure, and it couldn't be confirmed if he truly existed. The first owner of the divine sovereign immortal medicine was said to be this undying heavenly sovereign. In the legends, he had almost surpassed the gods, but many people do not believe he ever existed. The legendary undying heavenly sovereign surpassed the gods. Even the primordial races were unsure if he had ever truly existed. Yufan thought of the undying Taoist on the sacred cliff. That sheer cliff had been severed from the undying mountain. The death of the great completion ancient sacred body was very likely related to him. He was later suppressed by the Wuxi Great Emperor's God sealing list. From this, it was not difficult to see the unparalleled terror of the undying Taoist. He was surely comparable to the great emperors of old, an invincible existence who vied for supremacy. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have such a battle record. But after the Holy Prince heard everything about the sacred cliff, he said that the undying heavenly sovereign could absolutely not be him. If he truly existed, he would be an expert who had almost transcended the gods. Therefore, in the hearts of the myriad primordial races, the heavenly sovereign was the supreme and highest god. No one in heaven or on earth could defeat him. The Holy Prince's father was a sovereign of the Primordial Era. He had awed the entire primordial age through endless years. Yet, he too died right before the Holy Prince's eyes. His lifespan withered and came to an end. He personally witnessed the fall of a generation's battle saint sovereign. Although the Holy Prince knew his father was terrifyingly powerful, and that no one could match him, he still believed the undying heavenly sovereign was even stronger, because this was the deity in the hearts of the primordial races. The group sighed that even someone as powerful as the battle saint sovereign had been worn away by the river of time. The human race's great emperors of old were the same. In the end, they too passed on one after another. They asked the Holy Prince many questions. Unfortunately, he was too young back then. His understanding was truly limited. He was not a true living fossil. He couldn't provide more answers. In the past, they always referred to the primordial sovereigns and royal clans together as primordial kings. Only now did they realize there was a distinction. The group walked forward while chatting, strolling through the pure land of Jade Lake. They were in no hurry to return to the purple bamboo forest where they were staying. Jade Lake was vast and contained all sorts of terrain. They passed through a hilly area and arrived at a scenic cluster of lakes and ponds. The holy sons of the eastern wilderness had gathered here, along with holy maidens and various young talents. Donghua and Li Haishui decided to urge Yifan to quickly produce a congenital sacred body Tao embryo and make him the second Wuxi Great Emperor. Although the Black Emperor was very unhappy to hear their words, it ultimately nodded in agreement. It even said that the opportunity was rare and very much worth considering. If a physique like the congenital sacred body Tao embryo were to appear, the Black Emperor would risk its life to send him into this mountain, to sweep through all the kings in the future. At present, Yufan was the only person to have consecutively slain holy sons. He almost had the momentum to suppress the entire younger generation of the eastern wilderness. Right now, the number of people who could contend with him would not exceed the number of fingers on one hand. These people all felt a trace of nervousness when facing Yifan, because although Yifan looked harmless, he was definitely a god of slaughter. Just then, the Yaoguang Holy Sun walked towards Yi Fan. The two began a back and forth, probing each other with words. The successors of the great sects watched their conversation from the side. Not a single person dared to step forward and interrupt. All held a trace of reverence. If these two were to fight, no one could be certain who was weaker or stronger, but the victor between them could definitely charge for the position of being unrivaled among the younger generation of the Eastern Wilderness. And at this moment, in everyone's eyes, both of them were smiling. There wasn't the slightest trace of hostility. It seemed unlikely they would clash and start a great battle. Just then, the Dai Holy Sun, Xianxia, also walked towards Yi Fan. He had a smile on his face, but killing intent surged in Yi Fan's heart. That night, Xianxia had appeared, wanting to make a move. But in the end, he did not enter the Wuxi killing formation. Yi Fan detested this kind of person who acted like a gentleman to your face, but was sinister and venomous behind your back. However, Yi Fan put on a brilliant smile. The killing intent in his heart did not show. Wu Zhongshan and the others also greeted Xianxia with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. That night, they all knew this person had appeared. He walked forward side by side with the Daoyi Holy Sun, and very calmly greeted the group. Yi Fan also exchanged some false pleasantries with them. Speaking a few polite words, Xianxia suddenly spoke, saying it was a pity that the Zifu Holy Sun and the Wangku Holy Sun would never be able to appear again. Yi Fan hadn't expected that they would take the initiative to bring this matter up, not understanding why. By the distant lake, several old men glanced over coldly, their gazes locked onto Yi Fan. Only then did Yi Fan realize that he had been set up by the two Holy Suns. The Dai Holy Sun and the Daoyi Holy Sun had brought it up, sparking discussion among the others, but they themselves said nothing more. And in the distance, several grand elders from Zifu and Wangku happened to pass by. The grand elders of Zifu and Wangku said Yi Fan was a hero emerging from the youth, but their voices were bone-chillingly cold. There was obvious killing intent. The holy sons of both their families had been eliminated by the person before them, causing them to bottle up endless rage. For the two sacred lands, this was a kind of disgrace. However, they couldn't just kill Yi Fan in public. After all, there was an ancient saint behind Yi Fan. Although he couldn't appear openly, if someone were to eliminate Yi Fan in secret, that would be a different matter entirely. The Holy Prince sensed the killing intent the two grand elders had for Yi Fan. He spoke directly, calling them old fools who were trading on their age. The two old men flew into a rage. With a wave of their large sleeves, they lashed out. The Holy Prince was not afraid of them. He casually threw a slap, sending the two old men flying. But the Holy Prince didn't stop there. Instead, with a dozen slaps, he beat the two until they spat out mouthfuls of blood, leaving them in a sorry state. Several nearby half-step almighties stepped forward together, reaching for the Holy Prince. The Holy Prince was as fast as lightning. He exchanged a blow with each of them, and sent them all flying backwards. The Holy Prince's forceful methods shocked everyone present. A young man, who looked to be no more than 20 years old, could look down upon old half-step almighties. It was unknown how many years it had been since such a scene had occurred. Everyone else around was filled with immense awe. Facing such an expert, not a single person dared to approach. From the distant lake, a purple-robed young woman recognized the Holy Prince's identity. Li Haishui exclaimed, "A congenital Dao embryo." Liu Cao even directly shouted, "Sister-in-law." This left everyone nearby somewhat speechless. They had all heard the rumors about the congenital sacred body Dao embryo. They hadn't expected that Li Haishui and the others were actually entertaining such an idea. Everyone looked at Yi Fan with strange expressions. The Zifu Holy Maiden, ethereal as an immortal, turned and left. She seemed to not want to meet with Liu Cao and the others. The Holy Prince's power made Xianxia feel uneasy. He hadn't expected that Yi Fan would have such a master by his side. The Daoyi Holy Sun was also paying attention, eager to know who the Holy Prince was. He exchanged a look with the Daoyi Holy Sun. Then he stepped forward to show goodwill, asking questions indirectly. But the Holy Prince couldn't be bothered with them. He felt this group of people approaching him was just asking for a snub. Yi Fan felt a cold and fierce killing intent flash past. His divine sense was incredibly powerful, and he clearly perceived its source. It came from the Holy Maiden of the Wangku Sacred Land. Yi Fan sighed with emotion. He finally understood why the Ruthless Great Emperor had enemies all over the world. Killing one person would implicate a whole group. If you were always undefeated, you would always have to keep killing. The Jade Lake Grand Assembly began. The Pure Land was bustling with excitement. Overlords from all 8 directions came to visit. The most powerful experts under heaven had gathered. Various extraordinary people and hidden masters appeared one after another. The Jade Lake Grand Assembly was also known as the Immortal Peach Banquet. It was held once every 500 plus years. Experts as numerous as clouds gathered to participate in the grand event. However, this time was somewhat different from the past. It involved some strange stones for all the heroes to spectate. The major figures appeared one by one. Moreover, a peerless almighty of the human race, Nangongjung, had also arrived here. The current Yufan did not yet know that Nangongjung was about to bring him a tremendous disaster. The peerless almighty of the human race, Nangongjung, arrived at Jade Lake to attend the Grand Assembly. Nangongjung's appearance caused a huge uproar, because it was rumored that not long ago, he had entered the Bronze Immortal Palace with some older generation figures. The Bronze Immortal Palace was known as the Tomb of Peerless Masters. Those who entered were almost certain to die with no chance of survival, until Nangongjung personally admitted that he had escaped from the Immortal Palace. No one present could believe it, because besides Yifan and Jiziu, it was rumored that only one person had previously come out alive from the Immortal Palace, and he had even brought out an immortal corpse. However, that expert also perished not long after. Many major figures, like stars surrounding the moon, ushered Nangongjung into the Heavenly Palace, eager to know what had happened. Hearing that Nangongjung came out of the Bronze Immortal Palace alive, Yifan was shocked and uncertain. He didn't know if Nangongjung went deeper into the Bronze Immortal Palace than he and Jiziu had. Deeper into the Bronze Immortal Palace, Nangongjung said that inside, the immortal killing intent permeated all of history, that there was another world within the palace, and even the blood of a great emperor of old. Hearing these words, Yifan could be certain that the other party had definitely reached the depths of the Bronze Immortal Palace. Yifan was fortunate enough to be seated at the end of a heavenly palace. In a heavenly palace where only holy lords could be seated, he was specially invited as an extraordinary person. It could be said to be an extraordinary honor. Looking around the great hall, only he and the holy prince were so young. The others were all thousands of years old. Most had white hair hanging to their shoulders, their eyes filled with the vicissitudes of time. The ages of just a few of them added together could approach 10,000 years. It could be said that everyone here had a frightening background. Even the least among them was the number one cultivator of 1,000 kingdoms. Many people showed strange expressions when they looked at Yifan. He had slain multiple holy sons in a row, which had alarmed even the Higmans of various regions, drawing much of their attention. Everyone knew he was here as the successor of Heavenly Master Yuan, which was why he was qualified to sit here. Next, Jade Lake was going to ask him to seal the King of Strange Stones. Most people did not know the Holy Prince's identity. He was proficient in the art of transformation, which was on par with Yufan's heaven and earth altering great method. Even figures at the Holy Lord level could not see through it. Only the lineage of the Origin King, and a few living fossils from the ancient families of Origin Arts, who had cultivated divine eyes or heavenly eyes, were aware of the Holy Prince's arrival. Yifan took his seat here, wanting to hear Nangongjung recount the mysteries of the Bronze Immortal Palace. Unexpectedly, this matter was exposed. Soon after, everyone discussed matters over wine. Yifan exited the Heavenly Palace. He had nothing to talk about with these people. It was far less enjoyable than clinking glasses and drinking heartily with Li Haishui and the others. The Holy Prince also followed him out. He didn't know many people here, and was unwilling to associate with those old fossils. There were no topics to discuss. Jin Jixao walked towards Yifan, and greeted him with false sincerity. Just then, the Crow Taoist appeared at the entrance of the Heavenly Palace. Seeing him, Yifan's heart skipped a beat. Yifan was on the 8th level of the fire prison. He had seen this peerless old demon before. It had wasted a pile of divine ire during its forging, and had even slapped a disciple of a great figure from the Ji family to death. This was a peerless old monster, a figure from the same era as the Red Dragon Taoist. All those who recognized him felt a deep chill run down their spines, and quickly made way. Although this old demon had not appeared in the world for over 1,000 years, his ferocious reputation would not be forgotten. The Supreme Elder of the Jade Lake courteously invited him into the Heavenly Palace, not daring to show any neglect. Zhang Huairan and Li Haishui dragged Yufan along, insisting on toasting others. They specifically went towards the holy sons and holy maidens, and said they should first see which holy son was the weakest. Then Yufan could help them take care of him, so they could enter the prodigy manor. Anyway, all these people had killing intent towards Yifan. Zhang Huairan pestered the myriad beginnings holy maiden endlessly. Zhang Yaifei's younger sister, Zhang Kaoxuan, happened to be standing nearby. She stepped forward to stop this ruffian-like character, but Zhang Huairan whispered to her, that he wanted to find a new Andy for him. Zhang Kaoxuan was beautiful, charming, lively, and active. But at this moment, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. The disciples of the Myriad Beginnings Holy Land all glared angrily. Their holy son had been slain by Yi Fan, and their hearts were already filled with resentment. But they didn't dare to cause trouble for this group. Meanwhile, on the other side, Duanda very seriously asked the Zifu, holy maiden, if she had ever heard of the innate sacred body and Tao embryo constitution. Hearing this, many people directly spat out the wine in their mouths, and the disciples of the Zifu Holy Land all stood up. When Yufan walked over, he didn't deliberately release his aura. Yet, there was an invisible pressure that made everyone's heart palpitate. The disciples of the Zifu Holy Land silently retreated. Now, the sacred body has left the city. Yufan already possessed the power to intimidate his peers. With the exception of a few individuals, no one in the younger generation of the eastern wilderness could contend with him. Suddenly, a commotion broke out not far away. Many people ran towards the entrance of the heavenly palace. All the holy sons and holy maidens hurried over. Everyone knew that a matter of profound importance was surely being discussed in the heavenly palace. They were not qualified to enter, but they could listen at the entrance. Yufan and the holy prince could enter. They did not want to miss it. Nangongjung began to speak, recounting his experience in the Bronze Immortal Palace. He, along with many living fossils whose lifespans were nearly depleted and were about to pass away, entered the Bronze Immortal Palace. It could be described as a near-death experience. Except for him, everyone else died inside. What Nangongjung described was almost identical to Yufan's experience. However, they relied on absolute strength, forcibly carving a path to break in. It was not like Yufan's case, where he had relied on the power of the piece of green bronze to get through safely. Nangongjung's group practically shed blood with every step. Inside, the chaotic energy was dense. One area nearly wiped out 50% of them. The Yin-Yang Gate of Life and Death devoured an even larger group of old fossils. Nangongjung joined forces with a group of living fossils, and went one step further than Yufan and his group, and then entered the world within the profound gate. There, Nangongjung and the others heard a few ancient secrets. After entering the world of the profound gate, they were almost completely annihilated. A certain mechanism almost turned them all into dust. He said it was the aura of the Ruthless Great Emperor. When these words from Nangongjung came out, everyone was so shocked they stood up. He also said they saw the dismembered body parts of the Ruthless Great Emperor. Everyone couldn't imagine how someone as powerful as the Ruthless Great Emperor could be dismembered, that they were indeed the body parts of the Ruthless Great Emperor. He said that although they were only a few fragmented pieces, their killing aura could pierce through all of history. He believed that, aside from the Ruthless Great Emperor, who once bathed the world in blood, no one else's corpse could possess such a fierce aura. Actually, they were all stunned at the time. After careful analysis, they believed it to be the flesh and blood of an ancient great emperor, and possibly even that of a mythical immortal. But they searched carefully, and finally discovered a ghost-faced imprint. It was a mask that seemed to be crying yet not crying, smiling yet not smiling. In its sorrow, there was a hint of sunlight, traversing desolation to reach directly into one's heart. That was the very symbol of the Ruthless Great Emperor. From over 200,000 years ago, they searched carefully and found the imprint in more than one place. It was obvious the Ruthless Great Emperor had lived there. At this point, someone asked Nangongjung, "Are you certain it was the Ruthless Great Emperor?" Nangongjung said that he was certain it was the Ruthless Great Emperor, because we also discovered traces of the divine medicine planted by the Ruthless Great Emperor. Every great emperor planted a stock of immortal divine medicine. Their identities can be determined by this divine medicine. Many of the older generation knew that the immortality medicine of the Ruthless Great Emperor was precisely the true dragon immortality medicine that Yufan had once seen. The Ruthless Great Emperor's divine medicine was obtained by venturing deep into the 7 great life-restricted zones. Just like the divine sovereign immortality medicine of the beginningless Great Emperor, it was exceptionally precious. Hearing this, Yufan's heart trembled. He never expected that the Ruthless Great Emperor's immortality medicine was actually the true dragon divine medicine, because he had seen that divine medicine before. It was currently right here in the northern domain. He, along with Pangbo and others, had ventured deep into the ice plains, and had seen it in the underground myriad dragon's nest. At that time, the true dragon immortality medicine was in slumber, and he had come just short of catching it. Yufan had never imagined that he himself would have such an intersection with the Ruthless Great Emperor. He was just one step away from obtaining his immortality medicine. Suddenly, Yufan thought of everything in the myriad dragon's nest. besides many rare treasures and divine sources. They had also seen a bitter coffin floating up and down. The beginningless Great Emperor had also been to the myriad dragon's nest. There was an ancient 5-colored altar there, but the beginningless Great Emperor ultimately did not choose the myriad dragon's nest, but went to Purple Mountain instead. He didn't touch anything there. Yi Fen shivered. He didn't continue to think about it, and quickly returned to reality. Nangongjung spoke again, saying, "Perhaps we have all entered a misconception. The great emperors of old had no rivals, especially the ruthless Great Emperor. There's no way he could have been dismembered by others." He told everyone not to forget the experiences of the ruthless Great Emperor. After the ruthless Great Emperor achieved the Tao, he created the indestructible heavenly art in his later years. Actually, to solve this mystery, the major powers of the Eastern Wilderness just need to tell the truth.